So the next question is for Emerson. What does the economic security mean for the future worker, and if insurance risk correlates with credit risk and vice versa?
Yeah, thanks, Arya. Interesting question. I think this goes to the crux of what Gigacover does. Let me spend a couple of minutes to break it down. So, economic security, to me, is not just financial security. Economic security is also the means to earn income. Right? So, not just money, but the means to earn money. And to me, it's taken for granted if you mostly are employed. But if you're self-employed or a gig worker or freelancer, what you've really done is you've left the safety of the labor law protections. You've left the safety of employee benefits. You've left the safety of a stable income stream. And all these have repercussions on the risk that you face. And this is something a lot of freelancers or self-employed people overlook. Right. First of all, not having a stable income, that it makes you just so much harder for you to get a credit card. It's unbelievable. Even in Singapore, where credit penetration is really very high, self-employed individuals are asked for 24 months worth of income statements or something like that, just to prove. Whereas if you're working for a big bank, you just need 3 months, right? So there is a huge disparity. In terms of insurance risk, getting a malpractice suit, professional liability, or getting into an accident if you're delivering food on a bicycle or bike, that could set you back, a few months in hospital if it's serious and a huge medical bill. If you injured somebody else, then, the claim on you could be also very high, right? And then last, of course, is just having more, or rather, being able to take care of yourself and your family as well, day to day in terms of healthcare. Can you go see a doctor, get medicines, and not have to spend too much, right? So all these, or rather these three are the pillars, I think, to economic security, right? Of course, getting financing, seeing a doctor on a regular basis, and also preventing yourself from, or having enough protection against huge risks, and that basically is insurance. So that's what I think of when I think of how I can protect, or we can help protect the future worker. And it's just things that are taken for granted, things that are given to you. You have to now think about them yourself. You have to be more independent. You have to be more responsible about your future. If you have a family, then you're your dependents. And so we were trying to see how these three areas could tie together. And that's the second part of this question, right? Since we see the customers' behavior across a few areas, insurance and their claims, healthcare use, do they go for health screens? Do they add their family members? Do they go to dentists or whatever? And also, do they take loans, and do they pay them back? Do they take advances, and how do they use them? We are in a unique position to see how they interact, right? And that's the second part of the question here, right? Does insurance risk have any correlation with credit risk and vice versa? And I think the answer is yes. There are many studies that have been done, of course, in more Western countries, not so much in Southeast Asia, that show good insurance behavior, tends to be correlated with good lending behavior, and vice versa. And what we are attempting to do is to see if this works or is also correlated in Southeast Asia, in Singapore, in Indonesia. Now, I tend to believe this is true. I do think generally, if you're a good, for lack of a better word, a good risk, if you're responsible, if your families depend on, you generally have a different psyche. So it goes back to the causality around those two things, right? Why are they correlated? Because it goes back down to, as an individual, are you responsible? Are you good-hearted? Do you treat yourself professionally, right? If that's true, then both of these things should also be true. So that is Gigacover's way of adding to a worker's, credit assessment. I think we've been looking for, our contribution to how we can help our workers, our users and customers get access to better credit, or get access to better cash. And I think the answer for us, at least, is by working with them through various areas, by working with the platforms they're on, knowing their job history, knowing their income and how stable it has been, their job ratings even. That's going to help us predict better who will be a good person to lend money to, who is easier to collect money from.
But I think being the first, you're probably the first, right, in Singapore to do this, right, to ensure more the gig economy, and
Yes.
probably now the first one in Indonesia as well. Did you face any questions in the beginning from these gig employees, right, the freelancers, about the benefit that they will get?
Well, because we worked through the platforms, we had a unique way of getting to these workers and starting with a position of trust. And that was going through Gojek, going through Orange Tea, going through Homage, right? So if the platform is there to vouch for you and for the products, and the workers tend to be a little more reassured that if they buy something through this arrangement, they're going to be able to claim, right? We will honor the claims. So there weren't many, I don't think there were many questions or doubts about our credibility, because we still work with MAS licensed insurers and over in Indonesia, OJK licensed insurers. I think what the question was, how is it that you're able to bring such flexible and affordable policies, right? You can sell it to me on a monthly or even a weekly basis, and your coverage is, while lower, it just makes the policy a lot cheaper. How are you able to do this, right? And those questions were good for us from a PR perspective. We were able to then describe, because we're using basically technology to help enable stuff that our parent insurers were unable to do. So if anything, the questions were around, how be able to provide such good prices, as opposed to, will you be able to claim?
So it's really about the trust that you built the platform, but also with the insurance partners, right? Made you become a trusted partner as well, or trusted platform as well.
Yes. So on the insurance partner side, on our suppliers who supply us the insurance, capacity, we were willing to go risk sharing with them, and that gave them confidence that we weren't there just to collect a commission. We in some cases, we even share profit share on the claim. So if the loss ratio is lower, then we get some of the margin back, right? So that helped the insurers, feel that they could trust this young startup that was trying to assess this population. This population, the gig workers, independent workers, self-employed people, historically it just hasn't been really served very well. And so it's not that they were a bad risk, it's just people are generally afraid of the unknown. Underwriters, they had no models to go back on, right? So they were just they had no history of underwriting or claims in order to price these policies. So they kind of had to trusted us that we knew who we're selling to, that the market was big enough, and that we would help them fight fraud, right? So yes, it's trust on both sides: the customer trusting you through the platform, and then the supplier trusting you as well.
I see. Okay. Thank you, Emerson.
Yeah.
For Sunny, how did technology replace face-to-face needs of interview to become remotely offers short video chat?
Yeah, so what has happened is that, I wouldn't say it has replaced it. People would still want to do face-to-face interviews. It's just that when you look at entry-level hiring, those campus interviews are not happening. Any of those walk-ins are not happening because these are crowds, right? So any sort of wherever there was an opportunity where you could meet, offices you couldn't go. So people had to adapt like drastically. But most companies, unfortunately adopted by just cutting down headcount, and they wouldn't, unless it's super essential to hire, they wouldn't look at hiring those roles, right? They would just postpone it. So a lot of companies did that. But gradually, once they realized that there's no end to it, they started looking at ways. And that's where initially I would say Feb, March, it was way down, and gradually people realized it's not going away in the near future, and then we started adapting. That's where we came in, and people want to do it like a Zoom call. And again, I can't take names of companies, but people are just sitting for 4 hours like this, and one candidate after another. They're just interviewing. They've reduced it to 20 minutes, 15 minutes. Sometimes they would just do a voice. I invested on an airport because I would just, switch off my camera and walk a bit if I'm talking to somebody, if you have space in the house. So those were some of the adoptions people did initially. But then they realized that there has to be a better way. And the better way is that can you do one-way interviews where candidates pre-record their answers, and then the customer in their own sweet time. And you have to realize that a lot of people in the recruitment space, hiring managers, are actually women who have kids, and now they are stuck at home. They have to look at taking care of the kids, pets, make food, all that, and they have to do this with their work as well. So they would find time, say, late at night, 11 p.m. or beyond, and that's where they can analyze, shortlist, schedule those interviews with their hiring managers. So that's it. It was not a sudden change, but I think gradually it just moved into this new behavior.
But for these users are mostly the ones that are already using Interviewer.ai, right? You would see this trend of them using it like that, right? But how about those potential users or customers who are not using Interviewer.ai? How would you go about to convince them that using Interviewer.ai would definitely reduce their stress level or whatnot?
Yeah, so what you'd notice is that video interviews is not a new thing. It's been there since 2012. There are hundreds of companies doing video interviews. What has changed with this pandemic is that the jobs that you are interviewing for doesn't exist. Okay. So assuming you were a pilot, you don't have a job, but you have skills like eye for detail. You can do problem solving. You can do stress management, right? And how do you analyze those skills and figure out where else can you put this person on, And then if you have skill gaps, then can you take a course or learn it? I found this very interesting case in Germany, where they were taking, tourist guides in Mallorca in Spain as customer service agents for insurance companies. So in summer, they are like tourist guides, but in winter, they would develop as customer support agents because they have a huge demand for people asking for, insurance services. And all they have to do is the certification. So this is adopting into the gig culture that we were just talking about, right? Like you're doing multiple jobs, you're doing different gigs. So that's where I think, we are seeing needs. The other area where I found it very strange was the tech talent, right? Tech talent usually would go for coding skills. And now they are asking about, I'm going to be working with this guy remotely. Can this guy coordinate, work with a remote team? Can he be a leader? Can he lead and complete a project? So that's where, again, you're talking about a structured interview technique, right? Which is a scientifically proven way to assess candidates. Companies like Google and all have been using it face to face. Like if I were interviewing and you were a hiring manager at Google, you would ask me, tell me about yourself, tell me about this, because they want to be consistent with the way that they evaluate candidates, right? It's just that with technology, it makes it easier. And other companies, take time to adopt, right? So this is what we are noticing right now. It's all about skills now, more about skills. And that's where Interviewer.ai, when it assesses key skills, it helps the hiring manager to make better decisions.
For skills that you mentioned, are they mostly soft skills, or also like you can assess more skills like coding skills? Because coding skills you would probably need like a platform, right?
Yeah. So coding skills is a very like coding. Again, coding skills have been around for a while. There are tons of platforms out there, and most of the coding tests have a library somewhere. So some people would research it, people would know what they'll ask their friends, and it's not hard to kind of fudge that, or you're not cheating. So you don't really need a proctoring tool, but assuming I took a test, I just go and tell my friend, hey, you're applying for that, these are the tests, right? So you don't know that. But when you look at structured interviews, there are two parts, right? There's a situational interview question and behavioral interview question. So what you do is you put them in a scenario, like assuming you're interviewing for Grab, put them in a scenario where the code breaks, what would you do? And what we do is like you can kind of randomize those questions. So the next guy, even if he, kind of rehearses, scripts his answer, he will not be able to get the same question. So again, you're trying to see problem solving skills, not really whether he knows how to code this or not. So we are seeing the adoption of a video interview for a tech talent was something new to us, which happened, which kind of accelerated with COVID.
That's interesting. Okay, thank you, Sunny. Ardi, over to you, Ardi.
Okay, thank you, Arya. So both of you are venturing outside your own market. How does the journey like? So let's start with Sunny.
Venturing outside of our own market has been going after global customers, is it?
Yes.
So what we found is that, instead of us finding them, they find us, right? So as a SaaS platform, you can scale globally. So we had a lot of inbounds, people that we didn't think of just reached out to us. And I'm talking about major companies who reached out to us by just a chat, or they would just reach out on our site. And we were like, we haven't done even marketing into those markets. So it was good. It's pretty humbling. But I noticed that people were searching. I asked them, some of them, one was in London. I asked, how did you find us? And they said, I looked at AI interview. That's the query. And then we found, we are ranking well in UK, So that's some of the things that we noticed. Also, we realized that as long as you can support these customers from anywhere, it doesn't matter. People want to get the stuff done. Some of the platforms they have in their own market are probably not as advanced simply because they cannot move as fast. If you're, say, a 6 to 8 year old company with, say, 200 engineers, it's very hard for you to make decisions than a startup that can be very nimble and agile and can tweak and turn and meet the customer's demands. So those are working in our favor, but very, very early days. There's a lot of competition in the market, and we are far from having a very, very big head start. But we are being busy, so that much I can say. We are keeping.
But what are the hurdles? I'm sure going to a new market, different language, different kind of many things. Many things are different. Does it affect your global approach?
So language is not a big issue. So we found we've been able to adapt to Mandarin, for example, for one of our customers. It was super, not that tough to do. Biggest hurdle has been that they have been used to, recruiting in a certain way. So they have got licenses that they have bought for, say, 2 years, 3 years, and then it will expire at a certain time. So they are going to evaluate us and then wait for the certain time and then ask us to do those, tenders, and we have to do those paperwork. So those have been harder. Smaller organizations are more nimble. They just swipe a credit card and they are our customers. So that's easier. But large companies are still who should be using us because they are getting those high volume applications. I think it's harder to crack that in just like 3 months. There's going to be a sales cycle, longer sales cycle.
Yeah, because even in Indonesia, some SaaS players having a hard time with the large corporation because you need all the agreements, contracts, and it's not as easy as in Singapore. Maybe in Singapore, everyone is more accepting electronic invoice. But in some countries, they even like in Indonesia, they still want the hard copy of invoices. Does it affect your approach maybe in some countries?
Yeah, in Germany, you'd be surprised.
Yeah?
They still expect you to mail them the invoice. So they don't, you can't just send them an email, say pay here, enter your credit card. So yeah, those kind of things are there, and they have a due process. That's what I found in Europe. And then you need to be GDPR compliant, and there are other, tech validations and then tech security checks you need to do. So those slow us down. If we were a slightly bigger organization, I think we would have been able to move faster. But no complaints because this is exactly the kind of momentum we wanted as we enter into a phase where there is a vaccine, right? Hopefully the vaccine comes up by the end of the year or early next quarter. Then the hiring picks up and we are ready. So we are just planning for that rather than trying to capitalize on the current market, which is not bullish, to be frank, unless you talk about the stock market, which is right.
All right, thank you, Sunny. And how about you, Emerson?
Yeah, 1 second. Let me get my video on. Okay, so let me try and understand the question right again. What are the challenges I face when venturing out Singapore? Okay.
Yes, pretty much like that.
So my experience, we hear this very often that Southeast Asia is a fragmented, geography. The countries behave very differently, and I think I really got to learn this lesson the hard way. Right? So I would say don't assume that your business model assumptions will just work in a different geography. I think when we tried to transition our business from Singapore to Indonesia, I mean, language, sure, currency, sure, but what was really, I think, different was to not assume that you understand the consumer or understand your customer the same way you understood them in Singapore, right? We really had to revisit a lot of the assumptions, like, how much do they really care about security, stability? Who is the payer? How do they purchase? Do they care more about family versus individual security, or do they put their family first before them? How do you get into that mind? And what are the trends that are happening in the country? So those were the biggest lessons, right? And I think given that we're B to B to C, so the C is still at the end. It's a little, it's not the first point of contact. So the B's at least behave a little more similarly. Yeah, but getting to know the workers, the C's, was the biggest part of venturing out. And to that effect, I say don't, and maybe this is a good boost for Sunny as well, right? Don't stinge on hiring. Hire good people that you trust. Get new advisors who are familiar with Indonesia. Don't be afraid to get help. Just be humble, but be hungry. And that's what probably my 2 cents takeaway from all this.
Okay. A question from the audience, from Chrissy. It's been very challenging building a rapport and feeling connected through the pandemic. What would be your advice to startups in building a robust and inclusive culture remotely? Let's start with Amerson.